Echo Book Haven presents to you a summary of book Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. An introduction. Childhood for Goggins did not mean play and fun with children outdoors. His childhood was a series of shocks due to an abusive and violent father and a life of poverty. From here, one could predict a life filled with poverty and despair. However, the opposite is what happened. Goggins challenged all difficulties through self-discipline, mental toughness, and hard work. He overcame being an overweight, depressed young man with no future. By forcing himself to lose weight and improve his academic grades, Goggins became an icon in the United States military and a world-class endurance athlete. In his book, Can't Hurt Me, Goggins shares his incredible story, outlining a path that anyone can follow to overcome fears, doubts, and push their limits to live the life they want. The first chapter is a tough childhood and challenging adolescence. Goggins did not enjoy an ideal childhood of playing with peers and the warmth of family. Instead, he lived a life of servitude under his abusive and violent father, who forced the entire family to work in the ice skating rink he owned. At the age of 6, Goggins worked in the skate rental, and after finishing his work, he slept every night at midnight in the office at the skating rink. He could barely sleep due to the noise of skaters and loud music. He often slept in class at school because of it. But is that all? No, Goggins suffered violence and beatings from his father repeatedly. He also witnessed his mother being subjected to physical and psychological violence. If he intervened to defend her, he too would be beaten and abused. At the age of 8, his mother escaped with him to Indiana to start a new life together. However, they soon discovered they had moved to one of the most racist places in America. Goggins, the only black person in the city, quickly became a target for ridicule and racial hatred. He heard vulgar and cutting insults, and sometimes even threats with weapons. His life did not seem to improve in any way. Due to all he endured, Goggins began to suffer from nervous stuttering, hair loss, and changes in skin color. He didn't understand the reason for these symptoms during his adolescence. He realized that he was experiencing some form of anxiety, which can be called post-traumatic stress, a condition that affects those who have experienced violence and abuse in their childhood, leading to changes in brain chemistry. Among the many consequences of this change, it can also lead to potential memory loss and difficulty in learning and retaining information. Due to his condition, Goggins was placed in a special needs class in middle school. In his teenage years, he could barely read. In the second chapter, The Mirror of Accountability in High School, Goggins began to have a personal dream of joining the U.S. Air Force. After meeting a member of the Air Force, he felt that achieving that dream was far-fetched because joining the Air Force required specific talents and educational levels that he believed he lacked. Simply passing the military entrance exam meant that Goggins had to relearn everything he had learned in the last 10 years. One day, Goggins looked in the mirror at home, a long, hateful look at himself and the state he had reached. He wanted to change, so he decided to start with his appearance. He shaved his head, renewed his wardrobe, and brought pieces of paper with written tasks to remind him of what he needed to do to pass the military exam successfully. His notes started with simple tasks that could be easily achieved, such as cleaning his room every day, and gradually increased in difficulty, such as running a certain number of miles that week. Goggins called this the accountability mirror. This mirror completely changed Goggins' life. Every morning, he would perform rituals of standing in front of the mirror to remind himself of what he had to accomplish that day for his mission and goal. He began studying and training every day, never letting any time go to waste without investing it in achieving his goals. Although Goggins had many constraints, he began to believe that he could change his future. In the end, he passed the Air Force entrance exam and was on his way to joining. However, to complete his training for entry into the military, he had to pass one of the most challenging tests of his life: swimming. Goggins had a great fear of water, bordering on phobia. At the beginning of his military training, fear paralyzed him, fearing that he would fail the swimming tests. After a short time, routine medical examinations revealed that Goggins suffered from sickle cell anemia. This was a good excuse for him to leave the military. After leaving the military, Goggins now works as a cockroach exterminator and weighs around 300 pounds. On hard-working days fighting cockroaches, he began to ask himself how he ended up in this condition. On that day, Goggins watched a documentary about a U.S. Navy SEAL unit called the Navy SEALs, one of the most powerful units in the world. With the toughest training and physical and mental tests, one must be among the best to join the Navy SEALs. Goggins seized mental toughness and endurance, qualities possessed by Navy SEALs, even before the documentary ended. He decided to join these units and started making calls. Shortly after, he realized he was too overweight to join them. The training program would close its admission doors in just 90 days. Goggins had to lose 107 pounds in less than 90 days if he wanted a chance to become a Navy SEAL. This meant losing more than 1 pound every day. In the following days, Goggins implemented a strict fitness regimen. He woke up at 4 a.m. daily, trained on the bike for 2 hours, swam for 2 hours, and then went to the gym for intense muscle training. His training didn't end there. He spent the rest of his day cycling before and after dinner. Goggins created a new accountability mirror system to combat doubts and negative thoughts that he couldn't do it. He succeeded? Yes, he did it. He reached the required weight and joined the Navy SEALs training program, a 6-month program aiming to select only 30 out of the 120 candidates who were accepted. The third week of the program is the toughest and is called Hell Week. During this week, candidates face extreme training and tests on the beach and in the sea, which could threaten their lives. Goggins developed the concept of the armored mind during this challenge. He failed twice to pass Hell Week, with only one attempt left. At that point, he realized he had to break through the minds of the trainers standing in his way. The most challenging part of the week was lifting a boat above the candidates' heads to carry it across the beach. During this challenge, Goggins encouraged his teammates, shouting and cheering to demonstrate to the trainers that they would not give up. Goggins wanted to show the trainers that he and his teammates would not be discouraged, and their attempts and attacks would not be in vain. In the 4th chapter, the 40% rule, Goggins achieved his main goal and became a Navy SEAL. However, another problem emerged. He found himself longing for the kind of challenge he faced in Hell Week. In 2005, Goggins found the answer through competing in ultramarathon races known as ultra running. Through these races, he could challenge himself and his capabilities. If you had to wake up tomorrow morning and prepare for a 100-mile run, would you do it? I say we can't. It's impossible. Goggins, on the contrary, knew that only his mind could stop him. He decided to participate in the Badwater 135 race, the toughest ultramarathon in the world. His participation was motivated by a good cause for the families of his comrades in the Navy who passed away. Naturally, he had to qualify first to enter the race after passing the 100-mile race in one day in Santiago. When participating in the qualifying race, at mile 70, Goggins no longer felt well. He lost control of his bladder and bowels due to extreme fatigue. He suffered from blurred vision and ran with a broken ankle. An ordinary person would have stopped a long time before reaching this point. But Goggins is not an ordinary person. According to Goggins, when you feel you've done everything you can at this point, continue, don't stop. When you surpass this point, you will grow, develop, and break the limits that restrict you, keeping you where you are. In the end, Goggins finished his race in just 19 hours and ran an extra mile. This qualified him for the 2006 edition of the Badwater race. Goggins trained and prepared well for this race, simulating race day conditions. He finished 5th in the end and managed to complete the race in 30 hours, thanks to the 40% rule. Goggins was able to challenge himself, surpass his limits, and achieve something amazing, close to the impossible. In the 5th chapter, the unfamiliar against the unfamiliar. After the Badwater 135 race, Goggins participated in several races at a rate of more than one race per month for several consecutive months. But a surprise awaited him. He was forced to give up his love for competition forever. In one of the races, he felt pain in his heart and was transferred to the hospital. There, the surprise was revealed. Goggins discovered that he had a hole in his heart. that had been there all along. It is a challenging condition that causes oxygen deficiency in the body and can lead to sudden death. If the person regularly engages in deep dives, the risks increase. In the last 10 years, Goggins was a member of the Navy SEALs, which means his body was exposed, facing the impossible during training, and of course diving was an essential part of it. Miraculously, his illness did not kill him. Certainly, life will throw things we hate in our faces, and we will go through times when everything collapses, or almost does. Our response to all of that is what matters and what makes the difference. Goggins became one of only 36 African Americans in the Navy SEALs and the only African American elite ultramarathon racer in the United States. In his words, he became the unfamiliar against the unfamiliar, and in other words, placed himself at the top 1% among the best. He became one of the few unique individuals. But with the end of his athletic career in long-distance races, how will he push himself to surpass his limits? Once the U.S. Navy learned about his athletic achievements, they turned him into one of their top recruiters. His job focused on making the Navy SEALs a more attractive environment for young black people. Proudly, Goggins embraced the mission and began to focus on developing himself in recruitment and public speaking. But there was always that problem. He needed more. How could he push himself to be at the peak of performance again? Unable to compete in ultramarathons with his perforated heart, Goggins knew that the world record in the pull-up exercise was 21 times in 24 hours. After 2 failed attempts, he managed to break the world record on January 20, 2013. So how do you become unfamiliar against the unfamiliar? What is your goal, and what sets you apart from the rest? Be unique and be among the best. In the 6th chapter, the power of our minds challenges Goggins all obstacles mentally. He was destined for a life of despair, violence, and failure. Many who have experienced a challenging childhood similar to Goggins, or even less, have become addicts, criminals, or mentally ill, or all of that. So how did Goggins do it? He will tell you that his daily decisions allowed him to overcome obstacles and made him live a successful life, even though he didn't have any advantage in his early life to help him do that. How can you unleash your true potential? There is no secret to success. Simply, you have to work hard, be dedicated, and have complete commitment to achieving your goals. At some point, Goggins could barely read and worked in pest control, weighing 300 pounds. After losing weight through hard work, he entered the Navy training program. He simply did it by waking up early and accomplishing what he had to do. Most of us are adept at finding excuses, but daily life problems are part of life and not an excuse for doing nothing. If you want to accomplish something, you must make the most of the early morning. Goggins' typical day starts at 4 a.m., then he runs 6 to 10 miles, returns home, showers, and has breakfast. He prepares himself for work, then rides his bike for 25 miles to work, arriving at his office by 7:30 a.m. During lunch break, he has a full gym session or runs 6 miles on the beach. After work, he rides his bike back home for another 25 miles. By 7 p.m., Goggins has cycled at least 50 miles and run at least 10 miles, finishing his daily work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Everyone has 24 hours a day, and it's left to you to use it wisely. You'll find that once you have your morning, you increase the likelihood of achieving your goals. And once you reach a goal, you shouldn't stop there. You should look for the next achievement by pushing your limits and aspiring to the next accomplishment. You not only reach your goals, but also find safety and happiness. You've listened to a summary of the book, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. This was read to you by Josh Nams.